The Anxious-Avoidant Trap. What calms their body can break yours open. Right now, you might be staring at your phone, waiting for their name to light up the screen, replaying the last conversation, hunting for the exact second the warmth drained out of it. Asking yourself what you did wrong. Were you too much, too honest, too needy? Why do they go quiet right after you get close? And why does their silence feel unbearable when you can sit with anyone else's just fine? You're not crazy for feeling abandoned by that silence. That feeling is real, it's physical. When someone you care about goes quiet, your body doesn't read it as neutral. It reads it as danger. It reads it as loss. It reads it as being left behind. That feeling has a name. It's called the Anxious-Avoidant Trap. Not two people failing to love each other properly, but two nervous systems reading the same silence as opposite emergencies. Their silence feels like relief to them, but abandonment to you. Your reaching feels like safety to you, but pressure to them. One person is trying to breathe, the other is trying not to disappear. So today, we're solving the anxious-avoidant trap. Why their distance hurts this much. Why your reaching only seems to push them further away, and why neither of you was ever the real enemy. By the end, you'll understand the loop clearly, and the one move that breaks it without making you colder, crueler, or less loving. Because here's the verdict of this case. You weren't enemies. You were opposing survival strategies caught inside the same loop. Their distance was how they tried to feel safe. Your reaching was how you tried to feel safe. Neither of you was the villain in this story, but the pattern between you was still doing real damage. And if you're the anxious one in this pattern, this is the part I want you to hear early. You can't make yourself small enough to be safe. You can't become calm enough, quiet enough, patient enough, undemanding enough, or easy enough to heal a dynamic that only works when you keep abandoning yourself. That's not love becoming mature. That's the trap becoming invisible. You can't stop someone leaving by leaving yourself first. That's the line this whole case is going to come back to. Because the goal isn't to blame them, blame yourself, or wait until they finally understand what they lost. The goal is to see the pattern clearly enough that you stop mistaking self-abandonment for love. Before we go any further, if this is already describing the loop you've been stuck inside, take 1 second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It tells me which cases matter most to you, and it makes sure you're here for the ones that come next. And if you've got a moment, leave a comment and tell me this one thing. What does their silence make you feel before your mind has had any chance to explain it away? Now, back to the case. Let's start where the anxious-avoidant trap always starts, with the silence itself. The fight ends, or the closeness peaks. You finally said the vulnerable thing. You finally let them all the way in. Maybe for one strange hour, it felt like the distance had vanished, like the two of you were finally in the same room emotionally, like maybe, this time they understood, and then they go quiet. In that quiet, two completely different things are happening inside two different bodies. The bottom drops out of yours. The weight comes off theirs. For them, that silence is the moment the dentist's drill finally stops. The pressure is gone. The demand is gone. The emotional spotlight is off their face. For the first time in hours, they feel like they can breathe again. For you, that same silence is the heart monitor going flat. The uncertainty climbs. You start to brace. Your mind goes out hunting for proof of the worst thing you can imagine. Every minute without a word feels like another line in a sentence being read against you. They feel the storm pass. You feel the floor disappear. And here's the dangerous interpretation, the one that does the most damage of all. Don't take their relief as proof that you meant nothing to them. And don't take your own panic as proof that you're too much for anyone. The very same silence can steady one person and crack the other one wide open. That doesn't make either body wrong, it makes them opposite. Verdict on the silence, not simple. One silence, two bodies, opposite alarms, and once you can see that split clearly, the next piece falls into place, because it explains why everything the two of you do to fix the silence only ever seems to make the trap tighter. Watch what each of you does next. You reach, you explain, you check in, you apologize for things you're not even certain you did. You go back over the good times. You ask, in a dozen careful, casual-sounding ways, for one piece of reassurance that everything is still okay. And they do the exact opposite. They go vague, they delay, they give one-word answers. They shut the conversation down, or they ask for room, or they simply disappear into work, into the gym, into their phone. You know this loop in your own hands. It's the message you typed at midnight, cut shorter, deleted, rewrote, until, "Are we okay?" sounded like it cost you nothing to ask. It's the paragraph you turned into one sentence, the need you disguised as a joke, the panic you tried to make polite enough that it wouldn't scare them away. But in the pattern, those two moves are the same move. Yours is an attempt to feel safe by closing the distance. Theirs is an attempt to feel safe by opening it. You're both reaching for the identical thing, the feeling that the danger has finally passed. You're just reaching for it in opposite directions, and when either move is driven by panic, neither one builds an ounce of real closeness. It only buys a few minutes of relief before the alarm goes off again. So here's the interpretation that cuts both ways. Don't call your chasing love just because it feels devoted, and don't call their distant strength just because it looks so calm. Devotion that's powered by fear isn't intimacy, it's a person sprinting to outrun their own panic. And calm that's built on avoidance isn't security, it's the same fear, just wearing a quieter coat. Verdict on the chasing, not love. Verdict on the distance, not strength. Both are protection. Now watch how this gets worse, because the loop has a trick. It doesn't just make you hurt, it makes the other person look like the source of the hurt. Because these moves don't just sit side by side, they feed each other. One person reaches for closeness to feel safe. The other reaches for distance to feel safe. The more they pull away, the more urgent you feel. The more urgent you become, the more cornered they feel. And every single round leaves both of you more convinced that your fear was right all along. Their withdrawal becomes the exact proof your fear was waiting for. See, I'm being abandoned, and your pursuit becomes the exact proof their fear was waiting for. See, this is too much. I'm being swallowed whole. That's the cruel machinery of the loop. It doesn't need anyone to be evil. It runs perfectly well on two frightened people, each one reacting to the other's reaction. And here's the part that keeps people stuck for years. The trap hides itself by making the other person look like the problem. You blame yourself for being too much. They blame the pressure. You blame their coldness. They blame your endless need for reassurance. Both of you pour all your energy into building a case against a person when the real culprit was never a person at all. The culprit is the choreography. Reach, retreat, chase, withdraw, protest, disappear, apologize, go cold. A dance neither of you invented in that relationship, but one both of you knew how to perform the moment the alarm went off. A dance neither of you chose. Both of you learned long before you ever met, and neither of you can stop just by hating the other person for knowing the steps. So hear me clearly, because this is the exact line people trip over and fall. Understanding the pattern isn't the same thing as excusing the harm. The avoidant isn't evil, you're not broken, and the dynamic between you is still damaging. All three of those are true at the very same time, and you don't have to choose one of them to be the real one. They all are. The enemy isn't you, the enemy isn't them. The enemy is the anxious-avoidant trap, the loop that keeps making both of you abandon safety in opposite directions. And that word, abandon, is going to cost you more than you've ever let yourself add up. So let's add it up, because as hard as this next part is to look at directly, this is exactly where you start getting some of your power back. Look honestly at what you've quietly done to stay in this. You made yourself smaller. You started asking for less. You learned to keep your real needs off the table, so nobody could call you too much again. You started living on crumbs and telling yourself it was patience. You waited and waited for them to wake up one ordinary morning and finally, fully choose you. You told yourself that if you could just be calm enough, soft enough, understanding enough, they would finally feel safe enough to love you properly. And somewhere in all that waiting, you started confusing endurance with love. Here's what that really was. Underneath the story you told yourself about it, you weren't only loving them, you were leaving yourself. You were trying to prevent the abandonment you feared most by getting there first, by abandoning yourself before they ever could. And here's the cruelest part of the whole thing. It doesn't even work. You can't make yourself small enough to be safe. The smaller you get, the more it costs, and the further you drift from the one person who is always going to have to live your life, you. So don't dress it up as something noble. Erasing yourself isn't patience. Going silent about your own needs isn't maturity. Tolerating real pain with a steady face isn't secure attachment. It's just the slow, quiet disappearance of you, one concession at a time. And here's the thing that no amount of waiting will ever get you around. You can't stop someone leaving by leaving yourself first. Remember the questions you walked in with. Why do they go quiet right after we get close? And why does their silence feel unbearable when I can sit with anyone else's just fine? This is where the case starts answering them. Because underneath those questions are two more. The ones you usually only admit at 3 in the morning. Why do I keep reaching when I can watch it pushing them further away in real time? And why do my needs seem to land on them like a weight they can't carry? There's no shame in a single one of those questions. Anxious attachment is just trying to solve a frightening uncertainty the only way it has ever known how, by closing the gap. It reaches for contact. It scans the last message for hidden clues. It promises you that if you can just land one good reply, your whole body will finally settle down and rest. But here's the catch that keeps you spinning on the wheel. Reassurance from someone who keeps withdrawing can never, ever become a stable home. You were never really chasing a text. You were chasing the feeling of being safe. No reply can become safety if the pattern itself stays unsafe. And it helps enormously to see just how differently the two of you are weighing the same moment. To them, a conversation about feelings can become a corner with no visible exit. A request for reassurance can land like a bill they've no idea how to pay. Your distress can become a responsibility they were never taught how to hold. To you, that exact same moment, the vagueness, the request for room, the quiet, lands as rejection, as erasure, as the slow proof that you're being written out of the story. This is why the anxious-avoidant trap is so maddening. You're not arguing over one event. You're arguing from two different nervous systems, two different histories, two different definitions of danger, and both of you keep asking the other person to stop reacting to the thing their body is convinced is unsafe. You ask them to stop pulling away from closeness. They ask you to stop reaching through distance, and neither request feels small to the person receiving it. So here's the move that breaks it. It takes about 4 seconds, and everything in you is going to fight it. The alarm goes off in your body, the chest tightens, the mind starts spinning up the message. Your thumb is already near the screen. You can feel the sentence forming. Maybe if I just say it right this time. Maybe if I explain without sounding needy. Maybe if I make it gentle enough, they'll finally understand. And instead of obeying the alarm on instinct, you pause, not forever, not dramatically, not as a strategy to make them panic and come back, just long enough to notice the urge before it becomes a sent text. You stop treating their silence as a command you're obligated to answer. You stop treating your panic as proof that action is required immediately. You bring your attention back to your own ground, even if all you can do is put a hand on your chest and name it plainly. This is abandonment panic. This is my body trying to protect me. This is an alarm, not an instruction. Then you ask the question the trap never wants you to ask. What do I actually need right now? Not, how do I get them to calm down? Not, what sentence will finally unlock them? Not, how do I make myself easier to choose? What do I actually need right now? That pause isn't giving up, and it's not going cold. It's the first moment in a long time that the pattern doesn't get to choose your next move for you. The cycle only ever needs one person to stop feeding it. And you can be that person, not by caring less, by finally becoming loyal to yourself. Now, the two ditches, because this is where good intentions quietly slide back into the trap. Don't turn self-loyalty into a clever new strategy to win them back. Don't stop chasing as a performance, secretly hoping they'll notice the silence and come running. And don't weaponize your quiet to punish them for the nights you spent awake. The moment you make any of this about managing their reactions, you've climbed straight back into the loop, just wearing a disguise. This was never about getting control of their feelings. It's about stopping the abandonment of yours. And here's what changes when you do. That silence, the one that used to drop you straight into panic, slowly starts to land differently. A gap stops being an automatic verdict on your worth and starts being information. Someone goes quiet, and you no longer instantly assume you must be the problem. You check in with yourself first. You notice what you feel. You decide what you need next. Maybe you need to step away from the phone. Maybe you need to write the message in your notes and not send it. Maybe you need to call someone safe. Maybe you need to admit, without dressing it up, that this dynamic is hurting you. And maybe, eventually, you need to stop auditioning for a place in someone's life that only exists when you abandon your own. The silence becomes a signal, not a sentence. The pattern loses power the moment you stop leaving yourself to keep someone else close. Now, before I let you go, I want to leave you holding the difference between two things that look almost identical from the outside. Because mistaking one for the other is what keeps people stuck for years. Understanding them isn't the same as waiting for them. Explaining the pattern isn't the same as excusing the pain. Their fear doesn't cancel out your needs. Their alarm isn't more important than yours. You can hold genuine compassion for everything they carry and still flatly refuse to volunteer to be hurt by it. You can love them and still stop playing your part in the cycle. Compassion was never meant to be the reason you bleed quietly. So notice how far the question itself has traveled. You walked in here asking, why are they doing this to me? The better question turned out to be, what pattern are the two of us trapped inside? And then comes the one that finally gives you something to do with your own two hands. What role have I been playing in it? What has that role cost me? And what would loyalty to myself ask me to do next? You don't need to make them the villain in order to choose yourself. You don't need a diagnosis to trust your own pain. You don't need to win the argument about who hurt whom first. And you don't need them to understand a word of this before you stop feeding it. You're allowed to say it as simply as this: we weren't enemies, but this pattern was hurting me, and I'm allowed to step out of it. So here's where the case closes. You weren't too much. They weren't heartless. The silence wasn't simple. The distance wasn't simple. The panic wasn't simple. But the pattern was real. The cost was real. And the self-abandonment was real. This case was never going to be solved on the day you finally proved they had feelings buried somewhere under all that distance. It's solved the moment you stop treating their alarm as the only one in the room that deserves protecting, and you start protecting yours too. That's how the anxious-avoidant trap finally breaks. Not when they realize what they lost. Not when you finally explain the pain perfectly. Not when one of you wins the case against the other. It breaks the moment you stop losing yourself trying to make someone else feel safe enough to choose you. You don't need them to realize what they lost. You need to stop losing yourself trying to make them. I have been the relationship detective, and thank you for watching. If this helped you see things more clearly, please give it a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. I wish everyone watching all the best, and I hope to see you again in the next one.